My name is Clara Wentworth, and this is the story of how I lost everything before finding the fire inside of me that would burn brighter than the ruins left behind. I always thought my 40th birthday would be a tapestry of joy, woven with the laughter of loved ones, the clink of crystal glasses, and the glow of a four-tiered masterpiece of a cake I'd spent days perfecting, its buttercream swirls a testament to my meticulous heart. Instead, it became the day my world fell apart. A day etched into my soul, not for celebration, but for the raw, jagged wound of betrayal. My husband, of 15 years, Daniel, had kissed my forehead before leaving for work, his hazel eyes warm, his voice a soft murmur. "Tonight, sip's going to be perfect, Clara, just like you." His charm guided me through 15 years of shared dreams, late-night confessions, and the quiet comfort of routine. I believed that we were the couple that everyone admired, the ones who continued to hold hands at parties and completed each other's sentences. By midday, the house was a flurry of preparation, and I had invited our closest friends and family, a total of 30 people, to join us for an evening that I hoped would be unforgettable. The dining table gleamed with my mother's heirloom porcelain, which was saved for special occasions, and I wore a sapphire dress that accentuated my curves, and my auburn hair was styled in an elegant chignon. I felt radiant, alive, and ready to enter my 5th decade with grace. But beneath the surface, a quiet uneasiness stirred. Daniel had been aloof lately, his late nights at the office stretching longer, his phone buzzing with calls he'd take in hushed tones. Stepping out to the garden where I couldn't hear, and I had smelled a perfume that wasn't mine, floral and sharp, clinging to his coats. "Clara, this spread is insane. You're outdoing yourself." I laughed as I balanced the tray and looked around the room. My sister-in-law, Grace, stole a mini quiche from the tray I carried, her dark curls bouncing as she teased me about turning the big 4-0. The guests arrived as the sun was setting, their voices filling the house with warmth. "I think he went upstairs because he said he needed to grab something," I answered, my voice sounding lighter than the constriction in my chest. Lila shook her head, and her eyes flickered with something I couldn't describe. Grace shrugged and popped another quiche. The nagging feeling intensified, like a splinter lodged in my head. Daniel was the one who normally led the birthday song, his baritone voice echoing over the throng. Where was he? I nodded, pushing off the uneasiness, and carried on hosting, welcoming latecomers, and refilling wine glasses. Then came my cousin Vanessa, who was 20 minutes late as usual. Vanessa was my father's niece, but we had grown up together like twins, sharing secrets in summers. Her emerald green complexion and flawless curls of blonde hair enchanted me. Her beauty made my heart ache quietly, and I had always admired her, even when jealousy whispered in my ear, "Happy birthday, darling." She handed me a velvet present box and cried, "This party is breathtaking. Clara, you're a magician," pulling me into an overly tight hug as her perfume overwhelmed me with the same harsh floral note I'd smelled on Daniel's clothes. "I still check upstairs," I said to Lila, her brown eyes wide with concern, her hand brushing mine. But as the evening went on, I noticed something. Daniel and Vanessa were gone. The cake was sitting ready on the dining table, its candles unlit. The guests were whispering, waiting for the moment that never came. And 20 minutes later, 30, my heart was racing, a cold sweat prickling my skin. I forced a smile and said, "All right, I just have to find my husband." As I approached the master bathroom, I heard a whisper, soft and intimate, followed by a giggle, Vanessa's giggle, unmistakable, bright, and cutting, and my hand hovered over the doorknob. Despite my instinct to turn away and safeguard the fragile illusion of my life, the part of me that had been sensing the cracks for months, the part that refused to be fooled, pushed the door open. The second floor was a haven of silence, with the laughter below, muffled by thick carpets and closed doors. I checked our bedroom, but it was empty, and the guest room was empty. Daniel, my Daniel, was pressed against Vanessa, his hands buried in her golden hair, her lipstick, a crimson smear across his lips, her dress bunched at her thighs. Both of them were absorbed in each other, unaware of the outside world, and of me, until Vanessa's eyes suddenly met mine, her gasp a sharp blade in the silence. Daniel staggered back, almost slipping on the bath mat, his face a mask of horror. "Clara, don't you dare say it's not what it looks like, because it's precisely what it looks like," I muttered. My voice firm despite the tempest pouring through me, as he coughed in a stranger's voice. As if being caught had sparked something inside of her. Vanessa fumbled with her dress, her cheeks flushed, not just with guilt, but also with something darker, a thrill. "Clara, please," she started, approaching me with her hand outstretched. "It just happened." I laughed, a hollow, broken sound echoing through the tiled room. "In my bathroom. On my birthday?" "Vanessa, things don't just happen. How long does it take?" With his hands outstretched as though to tame a ferocious monster, Daniel came forward and said, "Clara, let's talk about the situation discreetly." "How long?" "8 months," Vanessa muttered, her eyes glistening with fake tears as I repeated the words, each one a shard of glass. "For 8 months, 2/3 of a year, and 240 days, I endured lies, stolen kisses, excuses like working late, and family visits, while I organized candlelit dinners, worried about our waning intimacy, and blamed myself for not being enough. Meanwhile, the party hummed below, completely unaware of the disaster unfolding above. "Get out," I said in a low and dangerous voice, while Daniel's eyes pleaded with me. "Clara, I can explain. Get out." They scurried by me, Daniel snatching his phone, and Vanessa grasping her pocketbook, their footsteps thundering down the stairs, their justifications to the confused guests, a pitiful chorus of emergency, and "we'll explain later." I yelled, my composure breaking, my voice a raw, primal thing. "Oh, Clara," Lila whispered, her arms wrapped around me. "I'm so sorry. I suspected, but I didn't know how to tell you." I looked at her, something stealing inside me, and said, "Don't be sorry," my voice trembling, but determined. "This isn't over." I sank to the bathroom floor, my sapphire dress pooling around me, my eyes fixed on a single earring Vanessa had left behind, its emerald glinting, like a cruel taunt. Lila found me moments later, her gasp soft as she knelt beside me. The event wasn't the end of my story, it was the beginning of their reckoning. As the guests below mumbled in confusion and my untouched cake sat forgotten, I made a vow. Daniel and Vanessa believed they had broken me, humiliated me and abandoned me to drown in their betrayal, but they were mistaken. I saw my reflection in the bathroom mirror, my eyes burning with a fire I didn't know I possessed. They'd pay for the affair, every lie, every secret meeting, and every time they made me doubt my worth. My 40th birthday passed like a fever dream, my heart a wounded thing, beating raw and ragged in the quiet of our Victorian home, now a hollow shell where love once lived. I moved through the rooms like a ghost, my sapphire dress thrown in a heap, the unlit candles on my cake melted into sad pools of wax, Daniel's betrayal, Vanessa's betrayal, arrows lodged in my chest, each breath a reminder of the wound, but beneath the pain, a fire was kindled, not the gentle glow of a hearth, but the blaze of a forest set ablaze, and I, Clara Wentworth, was not broken. I was awakening. The first morning, I sat on the patio with coffee cooling in my hands, the world outside appearing deceptively calm, sparrows fluttering in the oak trees, their songs a mockery of my turmoil, Daniel running off to a hotel downtown, his texts flooding my phone, each one a desperate plea. "Clara, I'm so sorry. Let me explain. I love you, we can fix this." I read them once, then deleted them. His words were ash, scattered by the wind of his deceit. Vanessa had disappeared to her mother Sip's house in a neighboring state, evading the fallout, like a fox escaping a hunter's trap. I imagined her there, portraying herself as the victim, her crocodile, tears deceiving no one but herself. They believed the storm had passed, that I would crumble, weep, and fade, that I would crumble, that I would weep and fade, that they didn't know the woman they sept awakened, the one who carried the strength of rivers carving canyons through stone. I glanced at Lila, my closest friend, who had harbored suspicions but remained silent, and experienced a subtle yet intense sense of betrayal. She brought a casserole that afternoon, her brown eyes heavy with worry. As friends do when words fail, she said, "Clara, you don't have to go through these experiences alone," setting the dish on the counter. I saw them at a cafe 3 months ago, too close, laughing in a way that felt wrong. I wanted to be sure. I would rather not break your heart over a hunch. I asked in a low voice, not accusing but searching. And she sighed while sitting across from me with her hands twisting in her lap. I nodded, the weight of her honesty settling between us. "It's broken now," I said, "but it's still mine to mend." I cried that night, alone in the king-sized bed with Daniel's ghost by my side. It wasn't the quiet sobs of defeat, rather it was the raging torrent of a woman betrayed. I cried for the 15 years I'd given him, for the dreams we'd painted together, and for the Clara who had believed in forever. But as the tears dried, a resolve took root, deep as the ancient pines that withstand winter's wrath. I refused to let Daniel and Vanessa write the end of my story. I would wield the pen and dip it in fire. The next morning I began my work, my mind a war council, strategizing in the silence of dawn. Daniel had always been careless with his secrets, his passwords, a predictable blend of our wedding date, and his boyhood dog Sip's name, Scout. I opened his laptop, left on the study desk, and entered the code. The screen flickered to life, an open book of his sins, his email, social media, and bank accounts, all laid bare. What I found was worse than I feared, not a fleeting moment of weakness, but a calculated affair. 8 months of messages, flirtations that began with coy emojis and escalated to brazen declarations. "I can wait to be with you, Vanessa." Clara suspects nothing. Each word a blade, carving deeper into my trust. There were photos, too, stolen moments in hotel rooms, her head on his chest, his smile one I hadn't seen in years, and receipts, dozens of them for dinners, getaways, and a necklace I'd never worn. The evidence wasn't just betrayal, it was ammunition, and I gathered it all, downloading every file, every thread of their deceit. But it was the revelation of their common goal that ignited my rage. Buried in a folder called New Ventures, I discovered emails detailing a plan. Daniel and Vanessa were planning to start a boutique branding agency called TrueHeart Solutions. The irony was bittersweet. They intended to use our joint savings, money I had helped earn through years of supporting Daniel's career, to build their empire. They had leased a small office downtown, set up meetings with Daniel's top clients, and set a launch date 3 months away. Following what they called the inevitable fallout, their emails revealed a timeline, stating that they intended to confess their affair after the holidays. Daniel would file for divorce and they would ride off into their new life. My birthday had merely forced their hand, speeding up their plan. "Clara finding us was a setback," Vanessa wrote. "But it might make things cleaner in the end. Cleaner as if I were a stain that needed to be removed. They believed they could erase me, build their future on the ashes of my life. But they were mistaken. Not only would I expose them, but I would also outmaneuver them, outplay them, and leave them with nothing but the debris of their decisions. My first step was to protect myself, so I got in touch with a forensic accountant, Mr. Elijah Shawthorne, who has silver hair and a reputation for uncovering financial secrets. We met in a quiet cafe, far from Daniel's usual haunts, and I provided him the documents I had compiled. "Wentworth, these are serious allegations," he said solemnly, as he examined the offshore account statements, the investment property registered in Daniel's brother's name, and the tax evasions Daniel believed I would never discover. "If this is true, your husband could face serious penalties." I nodded, my face a mask of composure. "I want it to be airtight, Elias, and I want it confidential until I say otherwise." He assured me of his discretion, his eyes gleaming with respect. "You're a formidable woman, Mrs. Wentworth." I then turned my attention to the money. Daniel was the CEO of his marketing company, and he took immense pride in his business sense, but I had been his silent partner, listening, learning, and taking in every detail of his world. I was aware of the accounts he believed to be secret, and the loopholes he exploited, and I had played the part of the obedient wife, but I wasn't a fool. The day after my birthday, I took the precaution of moving my inheritance and premarital savings into separate accounts, ensuring that my new business, in whatever form it took, would be financed by my own resources and would not be impacted by Daniel's greed. I hired a divorce lawyer named Miss Nora Caldwell. I trembled when Daniel's name was mentioned, saying, "I'm just trying to hold it together," with my eyes sparkling. I also shared cryptic sayings on social media, such as "sometimes the heart." I got up every morning as the sun painted the sky in shades of bravery. My Victorian home, which had once been a place of love, was now a war room where I planned my rise. The evidence I had gathered from Daniel's laptop, including emails, photos, and receipts, was my arsenal. But what really strengthened my resolve was their bold plan for TrueHeart solutions. They had dared to dream of a future built on my ruin, stealing our joint savings to fund their boutique branding agency. Their emails talked about a launch party 3 weeks away, a grand unveiling to Daniel's top clients, my clients, the ones who had eaten at my table, laughed at my stories, and trusted my warmth. I would take that trust for myself and dismantle their aspirations one by one. My first step was to create my own path. I filed for an LLC and called it TrueHeart Branding, a purposeful echo of their TrueHeart solutions. The name served as a subtle challenge and a silent declaration of my intentions. With my background in communications and the relationships I had developed over the years of supporting Daniel's career, I was no novice. I knew the language of persuasion and the art of storytelling. I met Marcus Reed, Daniel's biggest client and a friend from my college days, and we had lunch at a secluded bistro far from Willow Creek's prying eyes. The air was heavy with the smell of fresh bread and rosemary. "I'm so sorry," Marcus said, his dark eyes soft with concern. "I'm truly sorry," I responded, dismissing his sympathy with a sardonic smile. "I didn't ask you here for pity, Marcus. I have a proposition," I said. I presented my idea over seared salmon plates, a marketing strategy for his hotels that focused on emotional resonance and authenticity while undermining TrueHeart Solutions' generic promises. Marcus leaned back and tapped the table. I looked into his eyes and spoke steadily, saying, "I've been in the ring my whole life, Marcus. I just didn't know it until now." By the time we parted ways, he was intrigued and promised to take my proposal into consideration. His handshake was a spark of possibility, and I felt the ground shift beneath me, the first stone laid in the foundation of my new life. Back home, I carried on with my clandestine work, keeping an eye on Daniel and Vanessa's emails, watching their plans unfold like a map of their arrogance, and sending invitations to 50 of Daniel's most important clients. Their confidence was a blind spot, and they thought I was too broken to fight and too wounded to rise, and I let them believe it. When mutual friends called, I would let my voice crack. "I'm just taking it one day at a time," with my eyes glistening for effect. On social media, I posted snippets of poetry, such as "In the ashes, a seed takes root, and the heart mends in silence," each a carefully crafted illusion of fragility. I even left Daniel a voicemail, my voice shaking, "Can we talk, please?" Their complacency served as my most effective tool, leading him to perceive me as weak and allowing Vanessa to revel in her success. "I don't know if I can do this," he said without replying, but I knew he had heard it. "Daniel's lawyer is pushing for a quick settlement," she said, her pen poised over a stack of documents. "They're offering the house and your car, but they want to keep all investment accounts," I said with a cold smile forming the curve of my lips. "Tell them I'm too emotional to decide, Nora. I need 3 more weeks." She raised an eyebrow, her keen mind catching the glint of my plan. I answered in a low, thunderous voice, I'm sure, adding, "I'm not settling for scraps, not when I can take the entire table." I approached Daniel's clients, while Nora was stalling. I didn't accuse them, that would be too crude, but instead invited them. I called each one, and in a warm, professional voice, I said, "I'm launching TrueHeart Branding, a passion project born from recent challenges," and I said, "I'd love for you to hear my vision." Their responses were a chorus of support. "Clara, we had no idea you were so talented, and after everything, your story is inspiring." By the end of 2 weeks, I had obtained preliminary commitments from 8 of Daniel's top 10 clients, and Marcus had introduced me to 4 more prospects. Their interest was reverberating throughout my future. I was no longer Daniel's wife. I was Clara Wentworth, a force rising from the ashes. I carried the emotional burden in silence, and at night, when the house was quiet, I would sit on the patio and look at the stars, whose light served as a reminder of the vastness beyond my pain. I missed the Daniel I had loved, the man who had danced with me in the kitchen and who had promised me forever under a harvest moon, but he was gone, replaced by a stranger who had exchanged our vows for Vanessa's momentary excitement. Vanessa, my cousin, my almost sister, bled memories of summers spent together, shared secrets, and laughing beneath willow trees. How could she stand in my house, smile in my face, and take my life? Knowing that I required both the clarity of sadness and the heat of rage to weave this tapestry of retribution, I allowed myself to feel both the grief and the anger, which were like a river slicing through my heart. Elias Hawthorne, my forensic accountant, called with updates. His voice was steady as he went over the documents. The offshore accounts and hidden property are damning. Clara, the IRS will take the evidence seriously, but we need to time the release carefully. I nodded, but he couldn't see me. Wait until the day after their launch. Elias, I want them to taste their victory before it turns to dust. He laughed, a rare sound. You're playing a long game, Mrs. Wentworth. I respect that. I ended the call, my thoughts swiftly shifting to the next conversation. The launch events would be a collision of fates, mine and theirs, and I would make sure mine shone brighter. I reserved the grand ballroom at the Westbrook Hotel for my launch, the same hotel where Daniel and Vanessa had met for their second meeting. According to their emails, the event was set for 6 p.m., an hour before the gallery opening, so my guests would be captivated before Daniel and Vanessa began. Tessa, a perceptive young woman with an eye for detail, confirmed that there were 45 guests, including all of Daniel's major clients. She reported, "The presentation is loaded, the folders are ready, and champagne is at 6:45. Her efficiency was a reflection of my resolve, as each folder contained not only TrueHeart's sleek materials but also a customized letter that was tailored to each client, referencing conversations we'd had over the years. This was a subtle reminder of my intimacy with their needs, something Daniel and Vanessa could never match. I felt the weight of my duality as the launch date drew near. Both the Clara who grieved and the Clara who applauded were essential aspects of my identity. One evening, my sister Elena came over, her worry a gentle rain. "Clara, revenge won't settle you," she said, sipping tea at my kitchen table. "You need to let go, find peace." I smiled, stirring my tea. "This isn't such as revenge, Elena. It's justice. It's me taking back the story they tried to write," she sighed, unconvinced. But I saw the spark of admiration in her eyes. She knew I was more than just revenge. Daniel texted me the night before the launches saying, "Clara, I hope you're okay. I never meant to hurt you like this." His words were a faint echo of the man I'd loved, but they didn't stir anything inside of me, just a cold certainty. I responded, "You have no idea what's coming," and put my phone away. I stood in my bedroom, trying on the crimson power suit I had purchased for the occasion, its bold hue a declaration of my rebirth. The mirror reflecting a woman I hardly recognized, eyes fierce, jaw set, hair swept into a sleek updo. And I was no longer the broken wife. I was a warrior, and tomorrow I would go to battle. I felt the earth's pulse beneath me, which helped to calm my nerves. As the morning of the launches dawned bright and clear, Tessa met me at the Westbrook, her tablet glowing with last-minute information. Everything set. Clara, 43 confirmed attendees, including Marcus's entire executive team. I looked over the list, my heart pounding steadily. And the folders? The ballroom, adorned with crystal chandeliers casting prisms of light, navy linens and white orchids evoking elegance, and the TrueHeart logo subtly but omnipresently showcasing authenticity in a world full of lies, was a vision. "Placed at every seat, champagne's ready for your big reveal," she said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. My pulse accelerated as visitors came and Tessa whispered, "Clara, Daniel's here at the hotel bar. Was he meeting someone? Or had he figured out my plan?" As I greeted my guests, my crimson suit served as a beacon, and my smile was warm but calculated. Marcus raised his glass from across the room, and his nod was a silent vow. By 6:15, the ballroom was bustling with anticipation, with investors, influencers, and industry leaders, all drawn to the promise of something new and genuine. I sensed their gaze upon me, not as Daniel's spouse, but as Clara Wentworth, a formidable presence in her own right. At 6:30, I ascended the stage, my voice as clear and powerful as a river. "Thank you for being here tonight," I said. Looking around the room, many of you know me as Daniel Wentworth's sister's wife, or rather, his soon-to-be ex-wife. A ripple of nervous laughter broke the silence. What you may not know is that for 15 years, I have been the unseen hand behind many of the campaigns that built your brands. I clicked to the first slide, which displayed the results I had shaped, my contributions long hidden under Daniel's name. The audience leaned forward, enthralled, and I transformed from a shadow to the light. The ballroom doors opened, revealing Daniel standing there, his face awash in confusion, his eyes sweeping the room before settling on me. I held his gaze, a purposeful smile curving my lips, and went on. TrueHeart branding offers what others cannot: genuine insight, forged in trust and experience. His confusion turned to realization, and he took a step forward, but Marcus stopped him, his voice low, his hand on Daniel Sepp's arm. I didn't hear what they were saying, but Daniel froze, his face pallid. I persisted, my voice unwavering, as the screens behind me switched to a split display, one side showing Daniel's professional emails claiming my ideas, the other his messages to Vanessa plotting their business on stolen foundations. "Authenticity begins with trust," I said, the room quiet. Daniel turned and stormed out, the doors slamming behind him. I finished my presentation and invited one-on-one consultations. By 6:45, as the champagne flowed, I had verbally committed to 12 clients, including Marcus's network. Tessa texted from her car, arguing outside. With a sense of cool satisfaction, I slipped my phone into my pocket. Their launch was falling apart, and mine was soaring, but this was just the beginning. Tomorrow, the IRS would receive Elias's report, and Daniel's world would fall apart even more. The night of my launch was a thunderclap, its echoes rippling through the dawn, my crimson suit a war banner, and my voice a river carving truth from stone. I, Clara Wentworth, had stood in the grand ballroom of the Westbrook Hotel, not as Daniel Wentworth's broken wife, but as a weaver of my own destiny. TrueHeart branding was no longer a dream but a blazing reality, its light casting shadows on the crumbling empire of Daniel and Vanessa's Truetail Solutions, whose launch an hour later had faltered. A fire starved of oxygen, with only 9 guests, their voices hushed, their eyes darting to phones, buzzing with news of my triumph. I had taken the first victory, but the storm I'd summoned was far from spent. Its lightning would strike with precision, and I would watch their world burn. I stood on my patio with coffee steaming in my hands as the morning broke over Willow Creek. The sky was a canvas of gray and gold, as if the heavens themselves held their breath. The air was crisp with the promise of change, and my phone felt like a battlefield, with 42 missed calls, 29 texts, 17 from Daniel, 9 from Vanessa, and the rest from friends and coworkers who were trying to find out what had caused the night's chaos. Daniel's messages were a crescendo of desperation. "Clara, what have you done?" I erased all of Vanessa's pathetic pleas. "You're destroying everything, please stop. And this is too much, Clara. We're sorry, call it off." They believed that apologies would put out the fire I had started, but they failed to realize that this was justice and a rebalancing of the scales that they had tipped on my 40th birthday. My forensic accountant, Elias Shawthorne, had delivered his report to the IRS by noon. It was a carefully crafted indictment of Daniel's financial sins, offshore accounts, hidden properties, and tax evasions veiled under his brother's name. Each document served as a crucial link in the intricate web encircling Daniel's legacy. As I sipped my second cup of coffee, my attorney, Nora Caldwell, called, her voice sharp with satisfaction, saying, The IRS raided Daniel's office this morning. Clara, they're tearing through his files. The whole firm is in chaos. I pretended surprise, my tone as soft as a summer breeze. Really? That's surprising, Nora said with a knowing chuckle. Is it? 3 of your new clients contacted Marcus and asked for your contact information. Your launch is the talk of the town. I grinned, feeling a steady sense of resolve rather than excitement in my chest. Good. Let's keep the pressure on, I said. The partners at Daniel's firm, Henderson and Reed, received our documentation, evidence of his ethical breaches, taking credit for your work, and siphoning client funds for TrueHeart. He's been placed on immediate administrative leave, pending investigation. Nora called again, her words a thunderclap, and I leaned against the kitchen counter, struggling to process the impact of her words. How did he take it? She asked. With a calm voice, despite the internal turmoil, I asked. Not well? To which Nora replied, security escorted him out. He was shouting about betrayal. Irony's a harsh teacher. I closed my eyes and visualized Daniel, his polished facade crumbling, his reputation built on lies, and my silent labor now dust. The offshore accounts costing him more than money. They would rob him of the trust he had built, and he would be unclothed in public. When my doorbell rang at around 2:00 in the afternoon, the security camera showed me Vanessa on my porch. Her blonde curls were limp. Her face was bare, and her eyes were rimmed in red. I thought about ignoring her and letting her stew in her guilt, but curiosity, that old trickster, pushed me forward, so I opened the door and stood firmly in the threshold, blocking her path. Clara, please, she said, her voice cracking like dry twigs, you have to stop this. Investigators are investigating Daniel. They're suggesting he might face prison. I gazed at her stoically, my heart unwavering. Financial crimes are serious, Vanessa. You know that, she said, her eyes welling with fake tears. With my head tilted and my voice like a silk-wrapped dagger, I said, lose everything? Imagine the weight of having someone you trusted destroy your life. I can't imagine it, can you? She winced, my sarcasm a lash. We were wrong, Clara. I know that, but this is the way it's destroying lives. Her words sparked a fire of rage, and I said, my voice low, a growl of the earth itself, you stood in my home, smiled in my face, and plotted my ruin. Don't speak to me of destruction. I closed the door, her pleading face a fading echo. And my phone buzzed with a text from Daniel, saying, we need to talk, stop this before it goes too far. The audacity of it, as if their 8 months of deceit hadn't transcended all boundaries, was too much, and I remained silent, allowing my silence to speak louder than words. The news that arrived in the afternoon stunned even me. Nora's voice was solemn, saying, the IRS investigation triggered a broader probe. They've frozen all of Daniel's assets, including your joint accounts. I hadn't expected such a drastic move, but I had prepared, and my inheritance and premarital savings were safe, moved to separate accounts the day after my birthday. TrueHeart's launch had been funded by my own resources, untouchable, and Daniel and Vanessa's venture was tied to those frozen funds, their dreams now frozen. Your new business accounts are protected, Nora reassured me. We filed the financial separation last week. You're clear, I exhaled, my foresight acting as a shield. We want a divorce settlement that makes you whole, she stated. Daniel's attorney is moving quickly because they understand he's in a difficult situation. Willow Creek's close-knit professional community was ablaze with rumors and veiled but pointed social media posts that said things like, integrity is the cornerstone of business. Trust once broken is hard to rebuild. And Daniel's former co-workers, men and women I had hosted at my table, had distanced themselves, their loyalty shifting like sand. Marcus called in a warm voice saying, Clara, the buzz is all about you. 2 more clients from last night want in. You're rewriting the rules. I grinned, sipping wine on my patio with the stars overhead, a map of my new path. I'm just getting started, Marcus, and meant it. TrueHeart was no longer a retaliation. It was a legacy, mine to build, mine to protect. My mother-in-law, Evelyn, then gave me the call that I had both anticipated and dreaded. Her voice was as heavy as river stones, and she said, Clara, I don't know what's happening, but Daniel's a wreck. He came here, barely coherent, saying you've ruined him. I closed my eyes, and her kindness had been a balm in the early years of my marriage, and her pain was a wound I hadn't meant to inflict. He says Youssef reported him to the IRS, stolen his clients, and destroyed his career, she continued, her voice trembling. And I carefully considered what I was saying. I didn't steal what was rightfully his. Evelyn. As for the rest, actions have consequences. He chose this path, she said, after a long pause, and her breath was a soft sigh. He told me about Vanessa. What they did was unforgivable. I raised him better, she said, and her voice broke. It's not just revenge, Evelyn. It's justice. It's me refusing to be erased, I said, swallowing the pain in my throat. We hung up, the stillness heavy, her words lingering with a whisper of doubt. Was I going too far? Had I used more fire than I had planned? However, as I recalled the bathroom, Vanessa's lipstick-smeared face, Daniel's hands in her hair, the excitement in their eyes, and the emails they sent out, planning their future while ignoring my suffering, the doubt vanished and was replaced by a constant fire of purpose. I was the reckoning, not the villain. Daniel called again that evening, on his 21st try, and this time I answered. His voice was slurred, heavy with liquor and desperation, and he said, "What have you done, Clara?" I stood at my bedroom window, the neighborhood dark and quiet, and said, "You did this, Daniel," my voice as calm as a frozen lake. "Tax evasion, fraud, ethical breaches, those were your choices. I only brought them to light," he choked, either with a sob or a curse. "You've ruined me. Are you happy now that you've ruined me?" The question struck me clearly and without remorse. "Happy," he pleaded, his voice breaking. "Call off the IRS. I'll give you anything, the house, the investments. No, I'm free. You took my trust, my love, and my dignity. I've taken back my power. That quote's not happiness, that's justice. I already have what I want," I said, "a future without you," and I hung up. The silence, a blanket, consoling, and final. I stood at the window as night fell, the stars a chorus of witnesses. Tomorrow would bring new battles. TrueHeart's growth, the divorce proceedings, and the legal fallout of Daniel's crimes. But tonight I felt the earth beneath me, steady and strong. My revenge had been a wildfire, scorching the lies that bound me, Vanessa's tear-streaked face, Daniel's shattered empire, and the cost of their betrayal. But in the silence, a new feeling stirred, not triumph, but peace, fragile as a seedling, pushing through the ashes. I was Clara Wentworth, not the woman who had screamed in that bathroom. My story was far from over. A year had gone by since the night my world fell apart. My 40th birthday was a wound that bled betrayal, but from that scar grew a forest. Its roots deep, its branches reaching for the sky. Oh, Clara Wentworth no longer went by the name of the woman who had stood shaking in that bathroom, my sapphire dress a shroud of broken vows. Instead, I was Clara Sinclair, my maiden name reclaimed like a banner raised after battle. I sat at an outdoor cafe in a city 300 miles away from Willow Creek, the morning sun warming my face, the espresso bold and bitter on my tongue. TrueHeart branding's quarterly projections spread before me, a testament to the empire I'd built from ashes. This was the end of my story, but also its beginning, a tale of justice, fire, and the quiet strength of a seedling breaking through stone. The months following my launch were a blur. Every day was a step further away from the person I had been. Daniel's fall from grace came quickly, like a boulder rolling unchecked down a mountain. The IRS investigation revealed layers of fraud, tax evasion, and ethical transgressions. His plea deal spared him from jail time, but he was sentenced to probation, crippling fines, and community service. His professional licenses were revoked. His name was erased from Henderson and Reed's gilded past. He was a ghost in the industry he had once ruled. Vanessa faced less severe legal repercussions, her name linked to True Tale's frozen funds. She fled across the nation. Her beauty diminished by whispers and sidelong glances. Their empire, built on my suffering, was dust, and I stood tall amid the ruins. At our last meeting, Marcus Reed, my first and fiercest ally, told me, "You didn't just outmaneuver Daniel," his dark eyes glinting with respect. "You built something real, Clara. That's the true victory, I smiled, stirring my coffee. The revenge was spectacular, Marcus, but the building, that's what keeps me alive. He laughed, and I felt the weight of his words. TrueHeart branding flourished. With offices now spread across 3 cities, a boutique agency known for authenticity, and my team of 10 people welcomed me each morning with warmth, and their belief in our mission was a fire that warmed my soul. I decided to commemorate my 41st birthday by severing ties once again. The sale of the Victorian home I shared with Daniel was scheduled for this afternoon, and by sunset, I had severed the last ties to that life. The new owners, a young couple with a toddler, spoke of the backyard's promise and the school district's warmth. I handed them the keys, my heart light, because the house deserved a new story, free of the ghosts of betrayal. My 41st birthday was a quiet milestone, with no 4-tiered cake or silver balloons. As I sipped my espresso, I received a notification and an email from Evelyn, my former mother-in-law. Our communication had been cautious, a thin thread across the chasm of Daniel's sins. "Dear Clara," she wrote, "I admire the strength you've shown. Daniel lives with his choices, as we all must. I hope this year brings you joy and continued success. With affection, Evelyn." Her words brought tears, unexpected and sharp. In the heat of my retaliation, I had prepared for anger and accusations, but not for this. Her grace, her acknowledgement of my right to rise, touched a place I'd thought was inaccessible. I wiped my eyes, the cafe's bustle a soft hum, and saved her message, a keepsake of a bridge not fully burned. My retaliation left a tapestry of light and shadow. Daniel's career was in ruins. His name was a warning. He had moved to a small apartment and stopped texting me. Vanessa had started over, or so I heard. She was working a modest job. Her radiance dimmed. I didn't gloat. Their demise was not my joy, but rather the price of their decisions. My victory was TrueHeart. The clients who trusted me, the team who believed in me, and the woman I had become. But in private moments, I wondered if the timing, the public unveiling at their launch, and the cold precision of my strike had turned justice into cruelty. My resolve was rekindled by memories of the bathroom, Vanessa's lipstick smeared across Daniel's lips, the excitement in their eyes, and the emails that dismissed my pain while planning their future. My retaliation had been brutal, but it had been necessary, a fire to clear the underbrush and make room for new growth. People asked me if I regretted it or if I had gone too far, but the truth was a river, winding and complex. I didn't regret the justice, but I wondered if I had lost a piece of the Clara who had once believed in the eternal nature of love. My team was full of energy as I walked to my office after breakfast. It was a bright space with a view of a street lined with trees. Unlike the corporate towers where I had lived in Daniel's shadow. "The Read campaign is ready for review," my assistant Tessa said, passing me a folder. And another acquisition offer came in, from that Chicago group. I nodded. The value of TrueHeart shone brightly for those who recognized its potential, and I had created a highly sought-after entity that was entirely mine. "Let's schedule a meeting," I said. "But we're not selling, not yet." Tessa smiled, her faith in me unwavering. I drove to the restaurant for my birthday dinner after lunch, where the lawyer's office smelled of ink and possibility, and the weight of the keys was lifted from my hands. The restaurant was a cozy space with exposed brick and candlelight, and Elena raised her glass, her eyes shining, saying, "To Clara, who showed us endings are just beginnings in disguise." Lila and my new friends, Maya and Jamal, joined the toast, their laughter a song. And we talked about dreams, travel, and the little pleasures that make a life together. No forced smiles, no covert betrayals, just the warmth of chosen kin. My apartment, which was smaller than the house, was a canvas of my choosing, with art on the walls and books stacked by the window, a space for my comfort rather than for show. Later, as I walked home under the stars, I thought back on the year. The revenge had been a storm, fierce and unrelenting, but it hadn't been the end, rather it had been a passage, a painful shedding of a skin that no longer fit. The real triumph wasn't in Daniel's ruin or Vanessa's exile, but rather in discovering the Clara beneath, the wife, a woman of strength, intelligence, and fire, capable not just of retribution, but also of reinvention. The silver bracelet, delicate as a whisper, was engraved with the coordinates of the stars on this night, my 41st birthday. It was not a place but a moment, a sign of my rebirth. And as I put it on my wrist, my phone chimed and sent me a text from an unknown number that said, "I know it's your birthday, despite everything. I hope it's happy, D." I stared at it, a faint echo of Daniel, the man I'd once loved. I felt no rage or pain, just a quiet acknowledgement. I deleted it, not out of spite, but for closure. The Clara who had screamed in that bathroom would have examined his words, looking for meaning, for atonement, but the Clara I was now saw it as a leaf falling from a tree, no longer a part of my forest. My retaliation had been thorough, if not brutal, but it had taught me a valuable lesson. The opposite of love is not hate, but indifference. I had arrived at that shore as calm as a lake, at dawn, and although tomorrow would bring new clients, challenges, and possibly new connections, tonight I celebrated the most sacred bond of all, the bond with myself. I had burned the earth to rise from the ashes of betrayal, and what grew now was mine to tend, a garden of truth, of Clara Sinclair, unbroken, unbound, and free.